bright and early. The first one in how many years, Mike? Three, at least.
Wow.
The first post-COVID bright and early. So, whoa! Thanks for coming out. Yeah, it's bright. It's early, so nobody's talking. All right. Hey, I'm Aaron Zerofos, senior designer at Atomic Dust. And, thanks for the nice shirt. I don't think I've ever had anybody cheer for my position. So Bright and Early is a morning speaker series focused on creatives and design thinking process. And this morning, I am extremely proud to present to you one of my closest friends for half of my life. I won't tell you how many years. We went to design school together at Truman State University, Harvard of the Midwest. Yeah! Two Truman people. Anyway, Lindsey is the Global CX Director for New Balance. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
All right. She's going to talk to you about just her creative career and how she ended up there. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Lindsey Howell, please. Or thank you.
So do I need to take this off of here? All right. Alrighty. Yeah, we tried to do this multiple times, so this is like third time's a charm. We had January, COVID was like, no, we're not going to do this. February, Mother Nature gave us an ice storm, so that didn't work. So third time's a charm here. So when Atomic Dust came to me, when Aaron was talking, like, hey, will you come speak for our Bright and Early series and resurrect this from our pandemic hiatus? And I was like, oh, that's amazing. I'm so excited. And I was like, by the way, I'm actually not in a creative role anymore. So, like, what do you want me to talk about? This is a creative series. So we actually decided that it would be even better to talk about how my creative background led me to CX and how I ended up here. So this is where CX is my creative exploration. So like Aaron said, my name is Lindsey Howell, and I'm the global CX manager for New Balance. And a lot of people don't even realize that New Balance has a presence in St. Louis, even though we have had a presence here for some time and have actually a pretty decent sized office. I mean, like, when we actually went into the office. That's the picture, the top two pictures are of our office here, and it feels weird that we actually went in there on a regular basis, but it's located in Sunset Hills, right by Lohmeyer Sculpture Park, next to the Panera headquarters, if you're familiar with that area. And everybody here is focused on operations for NewBalance.com. So we have everything from development to creative to merchandising, site management, and everything in between. So all the operations for NewBalance.com are based here in St. Louis. So the cruise ship looking thing in the bottom right-hand corner, that is our global headquarters. That's based out of Boston. That's what most people think of when they think of New Balance, and a lot of the people I work with on a daily basis are based here. But just wanted to give you an understanding of what our presence is here in St. Louis. In addition to that, we also have a distribution center that's based out of River City, so serving the center of the country for if you're shopping on NewBalance.com. So anyway, I just thought we'd start there because most people don't even know that exists. So I've been at New Balance for 8.5 years now, and the majority of that time I was on the creative side, and the majority of my career, or my whole career, was on the creative side. So, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how I got there and what led me to this position currently. But in addition to me, I think I joined the CX team about 1.5 years ago, and even within the company, CX is still a relatively new discipline, so it's still very much in its infancy, and I think it was established about 2.5 years ago. So it's not to say that before that point nobody cared internally about the customer, definitely not the case, but we wanted to make sure we had an internal discipline and department that was dedicated to making sure that the customer was at the center of everything we do, and making sure that there was a team that was dedicated to ensuring the best possible outcomes for our customer. So that's what I'm focused on a daily basis. So you've probably heard CX thrown around a lot in the recent years. You've heard it come up as a term. You might know a little bit about it, maybe not, I don't know. But just kind of wanted to ground you in what CX encompasses and what we do. So CX stands for customer experience, and that's essentially the intersection of all consumer touch points with the brand that shape your perception of that brand. So if you think about a time that you've had a pleasant experience with the brand, or perhaps something that stands out even more when you've not had a good experience with the brand, and how that has shaped your perception of that retailer or that company or that brand, that's essentially what CX is. So it encompasses all of those things. If your experience was on the right side of the scale, you are likely considering to spend money with that company in the future. You've had a positive experience, you want to continue shopping there. If you're on the very end of that scale, you've probably become a loyal customer for life. Like, that's our pinnacle, that's what we're hoping for. Super easy, right? Like, just make people happy, just make customers happy, no problem. But if you're on the end of that scale, the left side of the scale, you are likely not only probably never going to shop there again, but you're also, if you're on the very end of that scale, probably telling everybody you know to avoid that company like the plague. So my whole job, essentially, you talked about distill your job down into like the most basic idea. My job is to keep people on these emojis. That's my focus. So that's just what I do all day. So, like I said, CX is there's a broad scope to that, and different companies have. There might be really robust CX teams, and in the case of New Balance, it's still in its infancy, so it's still very small and growing. But it can encompass everything. So all of those touch points, like I mentioned. So in the case of New Balance, that would include everything from you walking into one of our retail establishments and going to purchase a product or shop around. That can include you seeing an ad about New Balance or a video on social. That could be you shopping on newbalance.com and the experience that you have finding a product or figuring out what's right for you. Or calling our customer service because you have an issue or you need to make a return or something like that. All the way to what it feels like to actually wear the product and represent that product. So everything in between. So I can't possibly focus on all of those things every single day. Right now, the majority of our focus internally, because of the pandemic, has kind of poured gasoline on e-commerce, as you well know. And the growth there has been so insane that we are putting a lot of our internal energy around building a more seamless and frictionless experience on .com. So a lot of my day-to-day is focused on improving the customer experience on .com. And with that, I work very, very closely with our UX teams to achieve those better outcomes. So we might be working together on an initiative that we did some customer listening and got data that we need to improve a functionality on our site. Like there's some people are getting tripped up in checkout or something like that. We might be working together to figure out how do we do that in a better way? How do we achieve a better outcome? Or we might be figuring out a future state enhancement because we have a product launch coming up that has different needs and functionalities that we need to support. So an example there would be we recently launched a line of gender-neutral clothing. And because of the unique sizing that it was not traditional, men's and women's sizing, that we needed to have additional functionality there to support the customer, to help them understand what size made sense for them. So there's different scenarios that we work through that could be we're working through an issue to improve it, or it could be a future state enhancement that is completely new to support something that we're doing. So now that you kind of have an understanding of what CX is, I'm going to go to this insane visual here. And this is, if you're not familiar, this is a journey map. And the reason why, bear with me here, because I made myself abandon PowerPoint or Keynote in favor of testing out the presentation capabilities of the platform I use every day. So this is actually in Miro. This is a platform I use for journey mapping, and we do tons of this. And so if you're not familiar with that, the reason that we do journey mapping, the function of this, is to map out those end-to-end customer experiences. So that could be anything from a super broad view of the entire customer life cycle, or it could be something that we're digging into a really specific journey, like the returns journey. Like what is it when a customer needs to return something? What are the steps they need to take to do that? So we use these sticky note looking things to indicate the different steps in those journeys and also the touch points. So if you're interacting on social versus the website, or you've opened an email or what have you. So indicating all of those steps, as well as everything above that indicates various thoughts and feelings and emotions during that journey. So this is how we kind of make sense of these complex journeys that are, we wish they were super linear, but are often extremely cyclical or circular, and people coming in and out of those. And this is how we map out where there are points of friction and where we need to dig in deeper. So for the purpose of today, I did a journey map of my career. So this is a very, very simplified version of that, but and it looks super linear, and like there's no ups and downs, and it's really nice, but that's not how it was. But for the purpose of today, I wanted to go into this because I started out in, like Erin said, I went to design school and started out as a wee little web designer on the agency side, and I loved it. I really thought it was the pinnacle of creativity. Like, you had to be on the agency side in order to be super creative, and it was great. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic experience. But then the market crashed. That was not so great. And I was out of a job and looking for something, and I ended up taking a position in-house at, I went client-side, and I went to a small in-house marketing department as the creative lead there. And I really thought at the time that maybe I went to the dark side, maybe I'll never be creative again. And I thought, okay, it's fine. I'll give it 6 months, and if I need to change, I will. But a weird thing happened that I really started to enjoy digging in deeply on one brand. And I really liked the idea, from a creative standpoint, really understanding everything, the holistic company, the holistic business, the needs of that consumer, all of that, and how the creative work could help shift and support those goals. So that was kind of the first idea that I was like, okay, maybe going client side isn't so bad. So that is really what led me to New Balance, and I started at New Balance as a lead designer, and I was working on, I got to dig in deeply on a brand that I loved, which was pretty cool. And, I started working on the running business and the women's business there, which was very exciting. And about a year in, and actually at the time, a lot of our creative work to support NewBalance.com was still an external agency. So we're kind of in the process of shifting everything from that external agency to in-house. And so about a year in, I was promoted to creative manager, so I found myself running the entire creative team there that was supporting NB.com. And about that time, by that point, we had moved all of that work in-house. So the team grew pretty substantially. I think, somewhere around like 20-ish people. And that included everything from designers, digital designers, writers, photographers, and retouchers. And we were all there to support the daily content and creative needs for NewBalance.com. So there was everything from that you saw on site, everything from product photography to the landing pages and web banners to emails, out of home or online ads that drove to site, everything. So that was a pretty big remit that I was responsible for. And it was the first time that really, because the scope of my role became so big, that I couldn't design on a daily basis. Like, I just couldn't. Like, I couldn't take on design projects because a lot of my time was focused on supporting the team, mentoring the team, driving the strategic direction of the team. And so that was kind of an interesting transition. If you've ever gone through that in your role, it's kind of an odd thing. Like, your creative role is wrapped up in being a designer, and when you're no longer actively designing, it's a weird identity crisis that you kind of go through. So so that was kind of the first time that my thoughts of creativity kind of shifted. And at the time, like I said, the influx of work on our team was huge, and we had all this work that was now coming in-house, and then we also had e-commerce was just exploding. So the demand on our team was crazy. And before that point, we didn't really have a great process to handle that. And we just were kind of, it's like a waterfall of everybody and anybody who needed stuff. It was, we just did it. We tried to hit all these deadlines, and it was just, it became to the point where it was not unmanageable. So it was the first time that, and looking back, that I worked really closely with the operations team. And I was like, okay, stop creative direction. I'm not going to focus on that for a second. I'm going to focus on how do we make this process better so that our designers actually have the bandwidth, the writers have the bandwidth to actually be creative, think, and have focus. Kind of important. So I mapped out the whole end-to-end workflow, which is very, very similar to what I do today, but it was just like kind of the precursor to that. And I love the idea of taking this kind of what felt like a super complicated process and kind of distilling it down to something that was predictable and actionable and sustainable for the entire team. So once I got that under control, I really was focused a lot on partnering with different departments in the company to figure out how do we launch these massive omni campaigns. They've got a lot of different piece parts. There's inventory we have to worry about of product actually launching, and creative work that needs to go live, and functionality that has to be tested, and is it working on mobile? Is it breaking checkout? Is it do you have to be logged in? Whatever, all of that. Lots and lots of different variables. And it was about this point where I was like, hey, how come nobody talks about this in school? Like, they're just like, oh, the pinnacle of what you're doing from a design standpoint is just like this output. But they don't talk about all the shit you have to do to get there. And they're not acknowledging that you have to work with a million different teams. You have to articulate your vision to a developer. You have to be able to QA all of this stuff and identify where there's issues or bugs, and then document it and make sure that that gets fixed and test it on a million browsers and all of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's like all the stuff that nobody talks about, but it's like all we're seeing is this like pretty end product. But so anyway, I digress. But it really annoyed me that like nobody acknowledged that. And the skills that you need in order to be successful at that were so important. But I started doing a ton of advocacy across the company and education, because although e-commerce was, people of course used it and knew what it was, but they didn't really understand all the inner workings that it took to get there. So they really had this idea that digital equals easy and digital equals instantaneous, that like you could wait till the last second and just like launch it and it's fine. Because I think this idea of like social, just like you post a photo and it's just done, you're good. But they didn't understand all the depth that went into launching these campaigns and testing them and so forth. So I really enjoyed that, and that was also a precursor to the work I do today, partnering with lots of teams across the organization. So about this time, I was getting really interested in data. I wanted to get my hands on all the data I could, because I felt like I didn't know enough about, we're doing all this work. It was amazing, but we didn't know enough about how it was performing. Were people actually clicking on things? Were the banners, was one banner tanking while the other ones weren't? Were people scrolling? Were they bouncing when they got to that page? All of that, I wanted to know, I wanted to get my hands on all the data I could to drive creative decision making. So, and that was kind of the first time that happened. We hadn't really been in that practice at New Balance to use data to drive that, because a lot of our focus previously had been in retail or in out of home or whatever, and we didn't have the access to all the data that we had on .com. So really started getting obsessive about the customer and those kind of behaviors. And about that time, I was honored to be selected out of 10 people globally at the company to participate in this leadership retreat. And I thought, okay, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to meet tons of different people across the org that I wouldn't normally interact with and learn from. And it was that. It was, of course, that. And I built some incredible relationships and learned a lot about the business that I would have never understood in just staying in my current role. But the most pivotal moment of that was that we spent a ton of time digging in on our strengths. And, you know, it sounds like, oh yeah, of course you did, like, you're at a leadership retreat, learn a lot about yourself. But no, this was different. Like, we really, we dug in much more deeply, and it was not at all connected to our role. Not at all. So this is like the first time in my career that I was like, take your role of being a creative and put that aside. It's just like you as a person, like your innate strengths and skills. And this was kind of an aha moment for me. So, like I said, my identity was kind of wrapped up in the creative side, and creativity wasn't even a thing. Like you couldn't even, that wasn't even an output of this tool. Like that wasn't even one of the strengths that you could get. They were much deeper than that. So those stickies on the bottom are the top 5 that came out for me in particular. Communication is funny. Maybe not like TED Talk style communication, but like communication to others. But I was really good at figuring out how to take complex problems and make them actionable. I was really good at connecting with others and partnering with teams across the organization. I was very good at figuring out how to take action on things that needed to come to fruition and how to rally the troops against a common cause. And I was able to really relate and understand, and that's kind of a key one that comes up in my current role. But anyway, so this was kind of a pivotal moment for me and helping to understand how my strengths were transferable beyond and kind of taken out of my role as a creative, and how it's impacting or how it could impact positively my role in the company. So it was years before, you know, I actually actioned on that, but it really led me to start taking on a lot of new projects. So my team was still crushing it with all the daily content and creative that they were doing, and while they were doing that, I was focusing a lot more on partnering with teams to improve the holistic site experience. So much more high level than the content that the team was working on. And I loved it. It was amazing. But it was kind of like my moonlight, like my side hustle, because I was still managing this huge team and doing all this work. So when the opportunity for to move to the CX team came up, and I was like, oh, I get to do this full time. Like I actually get to focus on obsessing with the customer and improving this journey full time. I was like, yeah, sign me up for this. Like I'm good. So that was an exciting transition. I jumped at the chance. So that's kind of how I went from creative designer all the way to my role in CX. So let's kind of go back to why the heck are people talking about CX so much now? And why do we care about it? And there's a number of reasons. One, the customer, the power is in the hands of the customer these days. So this is very different than years ago when it was really the power of the retailer and the customer was kind of at the whim of that. But now there are so many options of where you can go spend your money. Like, there's no shortage of places where you can go buy shoes. So the competition is super fierce. So the power is in the hands of the customer, not the retailer now. And we recognize that in order for us to differentiate ourselves against competitors, that it is that experience, not only just the experience of shopping with us, but also the experience of wearing our product that differentiates you from your competitors. And the expectation of the customer is very different than it was years ago. They expect to be able to move fluidly between channels. When they want to, they need a quick question answered, they want to be able to chat. When they want to return something, they want to be able to do that a number of different ways and have it be as super easy as possible. And they want to be able to, if they see a product on Instagram featured, they want to be able to purchase it immediately. So there's an expectation that there's this fluidity between all of these things, and taking omni-channel to a whole different level. So, and the other big difference here is that customers today, and Gen Z has really been a huge driver in this, which I love, is that they've shifted to make companies care about the values that they stand for. So they want to make sure that if they're wearing a brand, that company's values reflect their own. So that's very, very different than where it was years ago, that this is what the company stands for, and okay, whatever. But the Gen Z customer is much more discerning and careful about that type of purchase. So we recognize that customer experience really, really matters. So you're seeing companies put a lot of time, energy, and resources against improving the customer experience. And that is really how we're boosting retention, how we're building loyalty, how we are improving or increasing the lifetime value of that customer, and of course, driving that competitive advantage. So here are all the things I do on a daily basis to make that happen. It's extremely multifaceted, and it is very much a team sport. So if you're not into collaboration, I would suggest not going into CX, because that is an ingrained part of what we do on a daily basis. But everything we do starts with listening to the customer. So we do this in a number of different ways. We have different platforms and tools at our disposal to gather all the data of the ways that customers are wanting to interact with us. So that could be pulling data from calls to our customer care center, to on social, to survey data, and everything in between. So listening to the customer first. And within CX, we are focused on kind of defining that brand vision. Like, what is our value proposition? What do we as a brand want to stand for? And making sure that that's at the center of everything we do, so that that vision comes to life, and that when a customer is shopping with us, they can feel that vision of what we stand for. And like I talked to you about before, we do a ton of journey mapping. So we are taking all of these experiences across the brand and breaking them down into parts, so that we can better understand all the steps of that journey and where there are areas of friction, where we need to focus. So that's really what helps us to define where we put our energy and resources, and how do we prioritize what we need to do next. And we do this at a global scale. So New Balance has a presence across the globe, and there are similarities of customers across all of those regions that we are present in. But there's also differences in customer expectations in regions. So although we're looking at our work at a global scale, we're also working with regional teams to make sure that the work that we're doing can be adjusted if there's nuances in those markets. So we know that somebody and expectations of a customer in Germany might be different than Hong Kong, might be different in North America. So there are times where we have to localize those experiences or have additional functionality to support the customer in that region. And like I said, I work together with a ton of different teams. So on any given time or any given week, I could be bouncing around from working with data quality to our product design team, to development, to UX, and everybody in between. It just really depends on what we're focused on to improve that customer outcome. And then it's my job to make sure that what we know the customer needs and what they expect to have in their experience is actually coming to fruition. So working with the teams to make sure that that actually goes to production, and that we are continually testing and iterating and using data to drive those decisions. So our work is never done because the customer is always changing, but that's the fun part. So we constantly evolve. So I thought it would be fun to kind of go back to the strengths that I talked to you about before when I was in my previous creative role, and how they align and how they play out to my current role. And they beautifully align to what I do today. And all of these skills are they come to life in very different ways, but they're the same types of things that I'm doing. And I still feel like a creative problem solver every day. I still feel super creative every day. It's just the output of that creativity is different. So I thought it might be fun to kind of take you guys through a couple use cases. These are quick ones because we don't have massive amounts of time, but a couple use cases of how we used customer listening to change or affect the things that we were doing on site. So this is a screenshot of one of our product detail pages that we lovingly call PDPs because we're obsessed with acronyms at New Balance. But on our PDP, we were about to embark on a project that was going to incorporate a lot of different functionality for some new products that we were launching and just kind of adjust things. And so we thought, okay, before we do that, we're actually going to get a benchmark, like a report card of sorts, of how the current structure is working today. Like, is anybody getting tripped up on things? Are there things that we need to address before we like layer on more stuff? So we started with, I think we pulled like 13,000 different users, and then we did a deep dive of about 100 different video sessions to watch people interacting with the page and understanding, where they were getting tripped up, or are they rage clicking something, or what's happening. So we learned a lot from that testing. But a couple of the quick things that came up that we didn't anticipate, that we weren't even like looking for, but we found out, was that these two highlighted areas, and it's hard to see on the screen, but the first box is the star ratings, the customer reviews. And the second box is our product description. So two kind of important areas that a customer might need to know about when they're shopping. And we know that customer reviews are extremely important in determining whether or not somebody feels like this is the right product for them, or what size should they order, or whatever. So thank you, Amazon, for that obsession. But very, very important in that user journey. So, and similarly, the product description helps somebody understand what the product is about, what it's designed for, what it does. And these were two areas we kept seeing people completely overlook. They were 100% bypassing them. They didn't even see that the reviews were there. They just assumed the product didn't have any reviews because they were looking for them up by the name of the product and by the price. That was where they expected to see it. And then same with the product description, that they were overlooking it because it was too small. They thought it was legal copy. They kept saying like, well, I think this is legal copy, and they were just kept going down to the product bullets that were much more like straightforward and not as finessed. And so we thought, oh my gosh, like there was a lot that came out of this, but these were the two areas that were like, yeah, we need to fix this, and we need to, just moving those things or increasing the size of the description, or even just putting a header that says description, seems obvious and basic when you kind of review it in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like, yeah, of course, it was intuitive. That's where it should be. You're watching these videos, you're like, it's here, it's right here. Like you're missing it. But it just goes to show you that just because you think it is obvious or intuitive doesn't necessarily mean that your customers do. And so listening to what they have to say or watching them interact with your product helps you much better understand what you need to focus on. So I love this quote because I think it's so true, that just like if you've ever been able to participate in any kind of user testing or market research or watch somebody use your app or website that you've designed, it is a very humbling experience. And if you can get through the painfulness of watching that, it is truly your best source of learning. Understanding where people are getting tripped up, where they think what should be obvious, and really helping you adjust the work that you've done. So I think this is so true, and we try to keep this mindset of using customer feedback to help better that experience and not be frustrated by that. So this next use case was so anyway, I pulled all of these. Let me back up for a second. So I pulled all of these from our Voice of Customer platform. So we use a platform called Koros, and that is essentially an aggregate of all the ways that customers interact with us. So it's a really one-stop shop for us to be able to go into the platform and get a sense of what's going on, are there issues that are popping up, are there things that we need to address, and it at this particular time, I had kind of gone into the system and noticed that there were a number of interactions, spikes around inventory and back in stock notifications. So we had a ton of customers reaching out to us about actively calling or chatting with our customer care team about, hey, I really want to buy this product or this color or the size. When is it going to be back in stock? And not surprised given the supply chain issues that COVID has caused. But the problem was that we did not have the ability on site for somebody to sign up for a back in stock notification, or better yet, purchase a back ordered product. So, they were actually reaching out to find out. So we noticed, and I thought, okay, we need to put the control back into the customer's hands and give them the ability to manage their own journey, not have to reach out to us. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna get a pulse of what are we talking about here? What's the size of the prize? So just within that month, there were about 700 interactions in the system regarding inventory or back in stock notifications. And that was just in North America alone. And we know that conservatively, only about 1 in 25 people actually reach out to us about something like this. Not everybody is going to take the time just because they want to purchase a product that they can't. They're not going to take the time to reach out to us. But the 700 people are like, I really want to buy this product, and they're going to reach out. So we can conservatively extrapolate that there's about 18,000 people probably affected by wanting to buy a back-ordered product. So if we applied $110 average order value, $110 average order value to those 18,000 people, it's about $2 million. So we should probably pay attention to that. But that just gives you, it's not to say that if we had back in stock notifications or if we were able to have purchase back-ordered product, that we can capture every single purchase. Of course not. There's still supply chain issues. It doesn't, some people aren't going to want to wait for the back-ordered product and so on and so forth. But this gives us an idea of what we're looking at, what we should prioritize. And it definitely gave us an indication that we needed to prioritize getting product-specific back-in-stock notifications set up so that somebody could select all of the things they wanted and sign up for that specific product. And then also working on getting the ability to purchase back-ordered product and communicate to the user how long it's going to be before they're going to receive that. So anyway, that's just a quick overview. I know that a lot more goes into this, but this is a quick understanding of kind of how we use data, how we use customer listening to help influence the work that we're doing. So I tried really hard to only use emojis during my presentation, but I couldn't help myself on this one. I was reading an article on Forbes about creativity in the workplace and how incredibly important it was, and how design thinking and creative thinking is so insanely, desperately needed. And this was the visual that went along with that article, and I loved it because I feel like this is the perfect example of how creativity works. But years ago, when I was a wee little designer, I thought creativity was just on the right side. I thought it was just all this artistic expression. You're never on the analytical left brain side, it's all there. And it was so wrong. It's just such a painfully narrow view of what creativity is. And as my career has evolved and as creativity has taken so many different shapes and changed over the years in many, many different ways, I've come to realize that it's this whole thing. It's this whole back and forth. So, my day-to-day, it still feels super creative. I feel like I get to be so creative every day. The output is very, very different. I'm not designing anything, but I guess kind of I am designing an experience, but it's a very different type of work that I'm doing, but it still feels equally as creative. And those use cases that I just took you through were kind of the spark of the idea of what we needed to do and things that we needed to work on. And that was what sparked this back and forth, left brain, right brain experience. So we go from, okay, here's an idea, what we need to fix, and we're going to do brainstorming and ideation of how we can fix this. And then we're going back to mapping that journey and taking in the data of what we're looking at and what we need to do. And then going back to, UX design solutioning, and then back and forth, and it's this wonderful back and forth that is creativity. But nobody, I think there's so many times that it's just this painfully narrow view of just the output. But this whole beautiful process is all of the creative thinking. And this is what I do on a daily basis, what it feels like. So everybody here, in some capacity, is connected to creativity. And we all have skills that we work on every single day without even thinking about it. And by nature, we are creative people are really adept at all of these things. We practice these things on a daily basis. You don't even realize how good those skills are because you're so often practicing them. You take advantage of them. You take them for granted. And we are super comfortable embracing ambiguity, which is super important in my day-to-day. Because nobody's coming to you with here's this perfect situation and here's just how you solve that. You're taking all of these different things and figuring out how to distill them down, how to action against them, what you need to do. And as designers or creatives, we have to be empathetic. We have to understand who we're trying to reach, what we're trying to do, the work that we're doing, how's it going to connect with that person. Very, very similar to what I'm doing today. We're very comfortable with revision, probably too comfortable. But we're used to revising and iterating and iterating and iterating, and that is baked into what we do. We're comfortable with that. These are not normal things that everybody is good at. We do this all the time. We're good at this. We know that this is part of that process. But that makes it easier because you're not getting hung up on this is my baby, and I don't want to change it. But you understand the importance of continually revising. And we're willing to be different. We're willing to think outside the box and kind of buck the status quo. Who cares how stuff has been done in the past? We're going to look at it differently. And that is so important today because the customer is changing so fast. And if we're not willing to think differently about how to support that experience or how to change the experience, we're going to lose. We have to be able to keep up. And as creatives, we are very curious and adaptable. And again, the world is ever changing. And if you are not somebody who's able to be adaptable and curious about learning and curious about learning a new industry or a platform or whatever it may be, you're going to be struggling. And we're natural problem solvers. These are just things we do on a daily basis. And these are things that I regularly have to, these skills are things that I regularly have to rely on every single day. So in the spirit of all things, right, Carly, and connecting with other creatives and being inspired and energized by other creatives and how creativity shows up in your day-to-day, I want you to take a second to appreciate those skills that you have that aren't just, everybody doesn't just have those, that you are practicing every single day. And take that and be energized by that and continue to go and redefine what creativity means to you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open it up.
We got a little time.
We got a little time. She has a hard stop at 11 minutes. Open it up for a Q&A for the speakers. So if anybody has any questions, now's the time to ask them. Eric Toby.
Hey, first of all, thanks for being here.
Oh,
It's really
thank you.
awesome. And thank you guys at Dust for doing this. I appreciate it. And Jordan, thanks to you too.
Thanks, everyone.
So, with all of this, New Balance is an interesting brand of shoes because it's gone through a lot of iterations on what that brand means. You are a part of creating that brand. Where does the definition of the New Balance brand come from, and how does that come to you? Is that from the CEO? Is the C-suite? Is it the agencies? Is it, where's that living? How do you play back and forth on it? I'm assuming there's some circularity there between you and it, and then back to you.
Yes, definitely. That's a great question. And it's definitely not one group, department, or person that's driving that vision. It's very much a collective effort to define that brand vision. So we really determined that we want to stand for quality and fit for our brand. That is what we want everything we do to drive back to. And that came from lots of in-depth research, that came from evaluating what our brand has stood for all the years. We're not going to just say, okay, today we're going to stand for something completely different than what was true to our roots, from the beginning. But yeah, it's not from one particular department. It's determined from us and a number of departments together, along with agency support as well, from that standpoint. And our job is to make sure that vision is incorporated into everything. So that's really how we play into that, is making sure that that's at the center of what we do.
But there's not a brand czar. There's that sort of.
There's a brand team, but it's they're working with all of these different teams to determine what that brand vision is. Yeah, great question.
Over here.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was so amazing and so true.
Oh, thanks.
So I have a question. There's a lot of small, startup e-commerce brands that I just kind of work with, and as me as a customer, when I'm shopping on a small startup brand, probably just shop on my website.
Yep.
One of the biggest things that drives me crazy is when I love a product and I'm trying to go put it in my cart and I realize, oh, that's sold out. That's sold
Yes.
out. So I'm not a certified expert, but what I always want to tell them is if that product is sold out, take it off your website.
Yes.
We just have your thoughts on that site, just scream that to them.
Yes.
That just makes them just click the X. I don't know, look at anything. I'm so frustrated.
No, I think that has been a hot topic this year because, thanks to COVID and supply chain issues, not everything that we want is in stock at any given time. So there's a couple different scenarios that we work through. So we have certain products that are super hot, heat driving products. They sell out in 2 minutes.
And you're never going to get it back.
You're never gonna.
It's not
No. This is a hot product. We launch it. It's people are waiting till 10:01. Boom, it's gone. So in those scenarios, we actually keep the product up and make sure that the messaging of sold out is really prominent. Because people we know are still, they know that this drop is happening and they're still coming to site. So not having a presence there doesn't make sense. So it's confusing. They continue to keep looking for that product if they don't find it, as opposed to landing on the product and seeing prominently that it's sold out. So there's that scenario. There's also other scenarios like you were talking about where we're going to get the product back in stock, but it's not currently in stock. And in those scenarios, we're, like I was talking about before, we're either incorporating back in stock notification. So if you select a particular color or size, and that selection isn't available right now, it would be grayed out, and instead of it saying add to cart, it says notify me, or sign up for email, or whatever. So it changes the experience so that it's clear before you're ever getting any further that product is not available to you, because that is an extremely frustrating experience. But there's different scenarios with us that some products are we know they're going to sell it instantly and they're not coming back, but there's a lot of traffic being driven to site for those products. So if they search them, we want to make sure they land on something, but it's just prominently displayed.
If it's just one of your regular products that was last season, you
Yeah.
sold the very last pair and the very last size, what would you say? Does that go away?
So in that scenario, it's different for a smaller retailer. They might keep it up and just have the sizes that aren't available grayed out or X'd out. For us, we would take that product and move it to our outlet site to move past season product in that life cycle. So, but for a smaller organization, I would make sure that the selections are at least there's some clear indication that those other sizes are not available and only that one is available. So, yeah, great question.
5 more minutes.
So it seems like you work cross-functionally with a ton of different teams.
Yes.
And I'm actually here for the quality department with my team, trying to figure out better ways to communicate within like our groups.
Yeah.
And so, what do you feel like is the most effective platform that you've found for that communication?
For communication across.
Quality versus design.
Well, as far as collaboration with other teams, a lot of what we're doing is like old school relationship building, like really making connections with a lot of different departments and regularly. So departments like quality, data quality, or things like that, we're regularly meeting with to make sure that we're focused on the right initiative. So there's that side of it, and then there's also platforms that we use that monitor customer behavior on site, as well as the customer listening that I was talking about. And those have their seats for across all different departments that interact with those. So we're kind of all seeing that same data, so that we can talk about it and understand how we need to action on it. So, but a lot of it is like the importance of relationship building is still there. I mean, that is really the biggest piece of that. Yeah.
Touched on it a little bit, but can you talk a little more about how you're gathering that VOC, that customer feedback, and not having bias to it?
Yeah. So we have, like I said, we have two different main platforms that we use for that. So we have our VOC platform that is the aggregate of all of our direct customer interactions, and sometimes we even go into our specific product reviews platform. So it aggregates into our VOC platform, but we're constantly keeping a pulse on that and just understanding, of the things we're hearing. You have a tendency to, especially if they're really heated, that we need to fix this right now. And so that's where I kind of gone back to what are we looking at here? Like what is the amount? Exactly. Yeah. So understanding like what is the volume of that happening. So one of the scenarios that we recently went through was people not being able to change or cancel an order after they've purchased, and understanding that the volume of those people was lower, but the negative sentiment attached to it was way higher. Like they were way more frustrated than maybe the bulk of people that were just annoyed because they couldn't buy a backordered product. So that's kind of how we balance it. We understand like the sentiment attached to it and the volume. And so it's really, that's kind of how we balance out what we work on and why, in what order. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like just me, but it seems like New Balance was like pretty lame about like 10 years ago. like what changed?
Fair.
Like,
Lindsay changed. She started.
Yeah, like it was me.
Grassroots, how are you moving away from
You're right, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was like kind of embracing the aspect of that and kind of making fun of ourselves. But then, yeah, there's been a huge, like our product design teams are just crushing it. Like they have, apparel that is fantastic.
I
We
just
have,
feel like somebody who got fired because somebody I feel like the design team is always crushing it, but like who approves that, So like
well, I mean,
was there, like, a change in
it was
that?
knowing that the customer is changing and making sure that we're adjusting to meet the needs of the modern customer. So really making sure that the design of the product and understanding that what people searched for 10 years ago, that running shoe they were just running it in, that was it. But now that's not a thing. Like they're buying a running shoe, but they also want it to look cool because they want to wear it when they're not running.
Yeah.
And so that has really shifted how we design products and making sure that we're acknowledging that change and how people are wearing and using the products, that they're determining how they use it, not we're determining. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
Was it, well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
I was just wondering, was it difficult to be friends with Garrett for that long?
Oh my God, so difficult.
I struggle with it.
Yeah, it's been really tough, but I mean, you keep them around. So.
It's part of the package.
Right. Thank you guys so much. I
Yeah, thank you everybody. I just want to conclude things. Thank you, Jordan, and Working Leisure for putting us here. Thank you to Boyfriend today for helping lead us together. Thank you to all of you for coming out and making this a successful first bright and early after the pandemic. And again, Lindsay, thanks so much. I'm so proud of you. So stay tuned on social media. We're going to be announcing next month's speaker here over the next couple days. So you want to hop on those tickets. We'll probably have like a notified me if we run out because now we have customers again.
Totally.
There's merch back there, Atomic Dust merch, because we want to get our name out so everybody hires us to do their work. So there's a table right behind Mike. If you don't know who Mike is, he's the guy with the great hair back there. So thank you, everybody. Have a good Thursday.